You guys laugh all you want, but a lot of people converted to the Jehovah's Witnesses all the way up until the 90s. They stood apart from other groups and churches, offering the promise of paradise on earth, alleviation from all suffering, even being reunited with their loved ones who had died. This, they were told, was God's original plan for all humans. But well into the 21st century, does the organization actually buy what it's selling? Have they lived up to their claim that they are, quote, no part of the world? Or have they been forced to change over the years to avoid their own collapse? Here are 5 key ways the Jehovah's Witnesses bent their own rules and inevitably became the thing they hate. So something that both outsiders and witnesses alike both expressed that they appreciated about the organization for a long time was that it was modest, but it was still joyful. It was a welcome alternative to what they considered was like the severity of the Catholic Church, but also a stark contrast to basically like what they considered the vulgar excesses of the evangelical megachurches. Specifically, the organization criticized the rampant televangelism of the 80s and 90s, warning Jehovah's Witnesses to avoid their corrupt influence and distortion of the scriptures for material gain. Several articles were written to expose how these TV preachers were, quote, fleecing the flock, telling people they were saved just to earn a buck. But Jehovah's people were different. They followed Christ's instructions to make disciples by going from house to house, not relying on these mass preaching methods. You see, it was easy, lazy, a giant money-making scheme that misled potentially sincere people. And while there was certainly some truth to this, the internet ushered in a new era of communication, and the organization was forced to rethink their strategies. So, in the early 2000s, they rolled out JW Broadcasting as part of their new preaching repertoire. Not only were Jehovah's Witnesses expected to continue knocking on doors, they were also instructed to spread the good news about this new snazzy provision in their ministry, and keep tuning in for their weekly dose of spiritual nourishment. But at least their religious leaders would never fleece the flock, right?
We have looked forward to this next fiscal year. In doing the math, we found that the amount of money flowing out will be much greater than the amount of money that we have coming in at this time.
Yes, it was only a matter of a few years before an organization that's estimated to be worth billions of dollars was asking Grandma to make out a check. Watchtower became just like their idolatrous competitors. And while the majority of Jehovah's Witnesses would just roll with it and rationalize it like they do everything else, the hypocrisy was not lost on others. JW Broadcasting became the perfect justification to put the organization's top officials, the governing body, front and center, turning them into overnight celebrities to their most faithful base. But make no mistake, others were turned off by this new move, citing the fact that they never saw the governing body before as a good thing. You see, these men were largely considered elusive, grandfatherly oracles that worked behind the scenes, lending to their authority as humble servants of God. But now, they were indistinguishable from the religious leaders of Christendom, a change that backfired spectacularly in the new millennium. The fact that the organization was taking advantage of new technology wasn't the problem. It only made sense to evolve with the times. If they were going to maintain any relevance or visibility beyond a rare spotting out in the neighborhood. It was that they demonized televangelism for years, only to pull an about-face and turn into their own 700 club. For generations, Jehovah's Witnesses were told to remain separate from the world. By this they will know that you are my disciples. Of course, Jesus was referring to the warm Christian love that they were supposed to have for one another. But Jehovah's Witnesses would cite these scriptures or refer to these scriptures to justify their dress code. For over 100 years, Jehovah's Witness women weren't allowed to wear pants to the Kingdom Hall, and the brothers not allowed to grow beards. This did, in turn, give them that distinct, clean-cut look. You recognized a witness when you saw them, just like you might spot a member of the FLDS, or the flock of seagulls. But in 2023, New Light dictated that it was okay for women to wear tasteful dress slacks to the meetings. And finally, men were allowed to grow their own facial hair. And yes, while a lot of us just rolled our eyes at this new change, reports from the inside said that this change sparked controversy. It pissed a lot of boomers off, and rightfully so. Because you have to understand, not only were violations of this dress code punishable offenses for decades, but it's a little-known fact that the reason men weren't allowed to have beards for so long was because the second president of Watchtower, Joseph F. Rutherford, was power-hungry and petty, and wanted to seize authority from its original founder, a heavily bearded Charles Taze Russell. But as already stated, Jehovah had a change of heart, and in recent years, allowed his men to finish out puberty and join the rest of modern society. Alright, the real crime wasn't that the organization unleashed a crazed, incentivized mob of sisters on every TJ Maxx in America, or that, with a few days between shaves, millions of brothers all over the globe literally went from boys to men. It's that Watchtower did it again. They started to look like everyone else. Like, really, seriously, what happened to setting yourself apart? Being the standard that the world should aspire to. Now you just look like the local Baptists, any other churchgoer who believes in looking clean and presentable to go worship God. It's almost like there's not a scripture that says you shouldn't wear pants or grow a beard. Oh, wait. So another major draw for converts in the 80s and 90s was the fact that the Jehovah's Witnesses used the Bible so much in their worship. Regardless if you agree with their interpretation, people who didn't grow up reading the Bible at church, or who were told to just shut up and listen to the priest, they found this really appealing, the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses were constantly reading their Bible. And in all fairness, I talked about this last year in a video, why the hell do people convert to Jehovah's Witnesses? There was a golden age in Watchtower, where the organization was really studious. Like, the publications were thicker, meatier. Again, you don't have to agree with what they printed, but there was an air of true spiritual enlightenment. Like, they really honed in or really harped on research. Like, it doesn't matter how you feel. I have Jesus in my heart. They weren't like that. Like, it was all about logic and reason. Can we prove certain things using the scriptures? Jehovah's Witnesses criticized other churches for relying on emotion and feel-good vibes. They basically found it performative and hollow. They were really dead set on your faith should be grounded in the scriptures and things that you can prove. Of course, now the irony is that you train an army of loyal parishioners, alright? You got all these Jehovah's Witnesses who are taught to study their Watchtower, read their Bible, cross-reference. You train all these people to dig deep enough, they're bound to strike gold. That is, they're going to realize they've been given a dud, and they're going to leave. Even if there was at one time a subset of brothers who had good intentions, the organization would eventually start its steady decline into the very territory it claimed to be above. After multiple failed prophecies and far-fetched doctrinal revisions, the leadership realized they had nothing to fall back on. JW Broadcasting went on to produce top-tier tearjerkers and good old-fashioned fear-mongering to basically whip up their emotions and prevent more and more witnesses from catching on to them. There'll always be the diehards who will never question this shift, who will always just accept what they're fed, see it as a blessing from above. But the younger generations, nah. They were weaned on social media. They're far too media literate, media savvy to fall for the absurdity. Just another way that the organization contradicts itself and takes its own people for stupid. Alright, so Jehovah's Witnesses are told to avoid pagan holidays and practices. Just ignore the wedding rings, not to mention the pesky little fact that toasting friends at a dinner party was at one time prohibited. But they recently pulled a switcheroo and gave that one the green light too. But at one time, in a land far, far away, Jehovah's Witnesses did not approve of excommunication. Back in the 40s, their Awake magazine ripped the Catholic Church for its pagan practice of kicking people out of the congregation and treating them as if they were dead. They called it out as a harsh pagan practice. Only for now deceased governing body member and famed hard-ass Nathan Knorr to institute the Jehovah's Witnesses' infamous disfellowshipping arrangement only a few years later. Untold numbers have been disfellowshipped from the organization, despite recognizing it as pagan and criticizing the Catholics for this same antiquated ritual. And while the witnesses have come under fierce legal scrutiny in recent years, trying to weasel their way out of censure and downplaying the severity of this fallout, no matter what they say, no matter what public statement they put out, how much they deny it, the Jehovah's Witnesses shunning culture is going strong to this day. So this is indisputably one of the biggest reasons people were drawn to the Jehovah's Witnesses in their heyday. The Jehovah's Witnesses don't teach hellfire. If God is love, they asked the householder, does it make sense that he would do something so cruel? And just like that, the Jehovah's Witnesses solidified themselves as a respite from the fire and brimstone, holy roller vibes of other churches. Think about it. If you're worried about hell your whole life, it came as a huge relief. The problem is, while the organization was criticizing other churches for using the hellfire doctrine to keep their parishioners honest, yep, you guessed it, they simply replaced hellfire with their own flavor of fear-mongering. The Jehovah's Witnesses are constantly threatened, not only with being cut off from their families through the shunning policy, but they're told that if they reject the organization and leave, they will eventually be destroyed at the Great War of Armageddon with the rest of humanity who also rejects the Jehovah's Witnesses. It's us versus them. It's join us or be wiped out at Judgment Day. And while it certainly could be argued that a swift death by comet is better than eternal torture, the organization still managed to become the thing they hate, burdening the minds and hearts of their parishioners, who are either afraid of losing their own lives at Armageddon or their loved ones who dare to leave. It's only natural to expect a company to pivot and adapt if they're going to stay in business. But we're not talking about a company. We're talking about a religion, right? What we covered in this list is the tip of the iceberg. The reality is the organization has become unrecognizable to the old-timers, even Gen X and millennials who were brought up in it in the 90s. But clearly, the rules apparently don't apply to those in power. And at the current rate they're going, specifically, pelting Jehovah's Witnesses with a barrage of policy changes, right? Little adjustments and tweaks to things that were once hardline rules for generations. More and more Jehovah's Witnesses are going to wake up and come to the harsh realization that nothing's separating them from the neighbor they once condemned. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you found this content helpful, and I'll see you guys next time.